Could your worst animal nightmare be this? On a routine morning swim, Ken Crew is silently stalked by a great white shark. This terrifying nightmare swings from bad to worse. The shark was on a mission, and it wasn't finished yet. Or could it be one of the world's deadliest spiders, hunting where you least expect it, close to an agonizing death? This victim's final hope is an experimental antidote to the powerful venom injected by fangs like hypodermic needles. This nightmare starts on a popular beach tucked into almost 13,000 miles of coastline in the state of Western Australia. Thousands of playful seals are part of the prolific sea life along this largely untouched marine habitat. They're the acrobats of the ocean and a favorite meal for great white sharks. These opportunistic apex predators constantly patrol the open seas in a relentless hunt for prey to satisfy their insatiable appetites. And sometimes they hunt where we humans mistakenly believe we're safe from attack. Perth's upmarket Cottesloe Beach is a playground for an affluent suburban community, including an early morning swimming group known as the Pod. There had been no serious shark attacks here for 75 years, until this fateful day when not one victim, but two were hunted down in an incident of frenzied carnage. The Blue Duck Cafe, near the North Cottesloe Surf Club, is where the Pod enjoys breakfast after their early morning swims.
The beach is quite a meeting place in the morning because people get down and those that go for their early morning walk or run.
Dirk Avery would add swimming to the daily fitness routine. He would join Ken Crew and their friends for a 1 or 2 mile swim up the beach to the Blue Duck. The Pod had been meeting soon after sunrise 5 mornings a week for 15 years, summer or winter, without fail. One of the regular early morning visitors to Cottesloe Beach was Father Brian Morrison.
The beach brought a certain kind of strength to you. It is the healthiest possible way in which to be at peace.
Monday morning, November 5th, in the year 2000. Overcast and rainy, not a great day for the beach, but perfect hunting weather for sharks. Like his friend Ken Crew, Dirk Avery considered skipping the swim.
And I thought, let's go.
Dirk's morning activity sets him up for the day. It's part of a daily ritual which he has been doing for years. It was also a daily social event with breakfast at the Blue Duck as a reward for their hard exercise. As usual, the restaurant was busy with early diners on that cloudy summer morning in November 2000. Little did the diners realize the horror yet to unfold. While the Pod headed to the water for their swim, Ken Crew's wife Robin had gone for a power walk near the beach with her friends.
I walk every morning, or most mornings.
She had no idea her life was about to collapse around her.
Ken would go for his swim, probably gym, swim, and then walk home.
The day didn't look at all inviting, but the Pod had seen it like this before, and they were determined. Of all the warnings on the beach, there was nothing about sharks. There hadn't been a fatal attack for 75 years.
When I got to the beach, I noticed that it was still pretty grey. The water was sort of oily, and it wasn't the best of swimming mornings. There again, all the Pod were there, congregating, ready to go. Ken said to me, look, Dirk, I think there's something out in the water.
What do you reckon that is out there? Could be a shark.
And I said, look, you're only imagining, it's probably only a seal.
Probably a seal.
But Ken's first instinct was spot on.
Sharks are under the surface of the water, and on a cloudy day like that, the water looks grey. So to actually be able to see one, Ken may well have seen a shark beforehand.
They had seen sharks before, but it wasn't much more significant to them than noticing any large fish or dolphin. They were simply sharing the same water.
He was just such a confident swimmer, he just had no fear.
The pod pushed out just beyond the line of breakers and then turned north for a half-mile swim parallel to the beach. They planned on coming ashore in front of the Blue Duck Cafe. It was their normal daily pattern. Meanwhile, at North Cottesloe Beach, a group of lifeguards was setting out for a training session with surf skis under the supervision of Alex Harrison.
That morning, we decided to take a double ski and a single, and the reason we took the double was because John Verity was coming along and he was going to jump on the back of the ski. Being fairly new to the surf ski paddling, he'd been a flat water paddler for a while, but he hadn't really sort of done any open water stuff. Very small break, not really much of a challenge. The morning itself was very overcast, very quiet. It was a soft morning, and there were a number of people in the water swimming up and down the coastline.
The pod was swimming north, and the paddlers turned south, heading towards one another.
The other four that were in front of us, 4 or 5, were quite a distance in front, and then Ken and I just sort of swam behind.
Between the two groups was an unwelcome surprise, and it was the paddlers who got there first.
We were just paddling along, and there was a shape, a big dark shape, underneath the ski. Now we paddle over bits of reef and bits of weed in the grass, you know, the seed grass and things like that, but you don't really expect this shape to be moving along with you. That stage, that realisation really hit us. It's a shark, and it's a big shark. It was massive shape, you know, the size of a dining room table, just cruising along, and then it's got its fins, pectoral fins sitting out. The pectoral fin was, you know, probably, half a metre below us. As it cruised along, I mean, it sat there for a fair while, just matching us. So pace for pace, drifting along beneath us, just clenched up tight, trying not to fall out of the boat. It was an absolutely frightening experience. Could have just flicked us with its tail and we'd be over.
This was a very confident shark with no fear of anything.
The shark had circled around us, towards the people. It had circled around 20 metres and then headed along the coastline.
To another group of swimmers.
So we had a choice. Do we go into shore, nice, safe, dry land? Do we head back out and save somebody? And it wasn't a hard choice to make. We had to do it.
Get the shark out of the water, quick!
It seemed obvious this shark was heading too close to people.
On really bright days, sharks tend to hang over darker things like reefs and various things like that, so their outline is broken up by seaweed or whatever, and they're not just out on the white sand. On an overcast day, that's good for a shark because it moves out from those areas. It's not quite as well distinguished, and as a result, it can hunt more effectively.
Without the need for camouflage, the great white becomes a free-ranging hunter with no boundaries. The shark knows it has the advantage. Its prey can't see it coming. Father Brian Morrison watched his friends in the pod, having no idea that within minutes, his peace of mind would be shattered.
On that morning, there were about 5 or 6 of us. Other 4 were probably just slightly ahead of us, and we were sitting back, you know, just chatting about things as we normally did.
The pod had no idea of the drama further up the beach, where the lifeguards were warning people out of the water. Meanwhile, the great white had moved on and was investigating Ken and Dirk, who by then were completely isolated from the rest of the pod.
We actually started to swim out through the break in the reef.
When they reached the edge of the reef, it was their marker to swim back to the shore, but the plan was about to erupt into chaos.
Ken had swum with sharks in Moreton Bay in Queensland, but he was just such a confident swimmer, he just had no fear. He just was doing what he loved doing.
What they did next was to give the shark its final advantage.
Traditionally, I always did the little bit of a sneaky thing. I'd sort of cut in on a 45-degree angle, and Ken would always go straight ahead. So I cut in on a 45-degree angle, Ken went straight ahead.
The shark now had a choice. The prey had split up.
I can be pretty damn sure that this shark was swimming around. I'm interested, there's a lot of noise going on, there's something happening in this area. Oh gee whiz, look, there's one of these mildly interesting animals flailing in the water, putting low level vibrations out, and to a shark it goes, okay, well that one's by himself, maybe I'll go and have a bite at that one.
With Dirk heading to shallow water, Ken Crew was isolated in the deep. Before he realized what was happening, it would be too late.
you're able to go from what appears to be a totally nonchalant swimming pattern, like I'm not interested at all, straight into a mode, and they're on top of you before you even know it.
Horrified diners could not tear their eyes away. From the frantic struggle unfolding, Ken was battling for his life as the shark went for his legs.
The next thing I recall seeing this enormous amount of water go up in the air.
Eyewitnesses in the cafe and on the beach could hardly believe their eyes as the foaming water turned red with blood.
Then it was just sort of a brownish reddish colour. I knew that when I saw that it was a shark.
They could only guess at the gruesome mutilation happening below the surface.
I heard this terrifying screams.
The shark had taken his entire right leg. Ken's pounding heart was pumping his life straight into the water from his severed femoral artery. The great white had finished with Ken and then turned his attention elsewhere.
I sort of stopped in my tracks, and I was probably in about waist-deep water just off the reef.
These sharks are essentially stealth hunters. It's very rare that a victim will see the shark beforehand, because if you've already seen the shark beforehand, the chances are you're going to survive.
Dirk had been lucky enough to see it coming.
The next thing I recall was seeing this big dorsal fin coming at me. The dorsal fin was huge. I think I was probably the word's petrified.
I ran to the phone, dialed 000, screamed,
"There's been a shark attack at North Cotslow Beach.
Police and ambulance, please."
Send an ambulance and police.
The 911 call would be in vain.
My first immediate reaction was to sort of back and try and get out of the water. Unfortunately, the shark sort of got its mouth around my left leg. Certainly having problems because of the depth of the water. Found out later on that sharks have to sort of turn on their side a bit to get a good grip, and that's what it was trying to do. I thought, well, look, the only way I'm going to get out of this is to try and wrench my left foot out of the shark's mouth by putting my foot forward and kicking the nose at the shark, and I managed to wrench it out. And then I just beat the water feverishly with my hands.
But this shark was on a mission.
I could see the shark thrashing in the water. I could see Dirk splashing at the shark, trying to keep it away and stumbling on a reef. And the only thing I could think of doing was either to get between Dirk and the shark or to hit the shark.
With amazing bravery, they rushed straight into action.
The shark was still coming. And luckily, I backed out of the water. People came to my assistance. In hindsight, what I think is that what the shark was trying to do when I was in the water was obviously get a better grip. And if it had got a better grip, I probably would have lost part of my foot.
It was an incredible escape, especially from a shark that seemed determined to take both swimmers, and it wasn't finished yet.
The shark sort of harried at him for a short while, but just gave up.
The shark was still on the hunt, and panic took over as other swimmers realized the danger.
We could hear a lot of screaming, a lot of commotion was going on. We could see people trying to get out of the water, other people running. I was so focused on what Dirk was doing that I didn't really notice the big blood pool and a body sitting in it.
Ken Crew, now floating face down in a sea of blood, needed a miracle, and heroic onlooker couldn't stand by and watch it happen.
We got halfway to Dirk, and this crazy guy started swimming out deeper water past us. And I just couldn't believe this guy. I was yelling at him.
Hey mate, you're going the wrong way.
He was trying to point to something further out. John behind me was saying he's pointing at the body in the water. News to me. I hadn't seen the body in the water. You know, I noticed the big dark puddle, but hadn't put two and two together. At that point, we just had to back the ski back up and try and get the guy to hold on to us.
To have swum out and retrieve Ken's body out of the water, and that's an extremely heroic act. When the shark was still in the water,
I was just telling John to tell him to grab hold of the rudder on the back and we'll tow him in.
The shark was still close by, still hunting, maybe even directly below them.
Admittedly, the adrenaline was pumping.
All three men were putting their lives on the line in a final effort to snatch Ken Crew back from the jaws of death.
Went up the steps and went to the Surf Lifesaving Club's first aid centre there. When you suffer such a shock, you don't tend to feel the pain. It's at a later stage you do feel it.
With so much blood loss, the lifesavers knew it was desperate, as Father Brian realized it was his friend Ken.
I ran back down the sand and the lifesavers were bringing Kenny out.
Professional help was on the way. If anyone could have made a difference, it would be the trained lifeguards.
We just went all the way to the beach.
They were focused on a race against time. Every second was critical.
He let go, meters before that because there was a number of people in the water assisting him.
They had done this in drills over and over again. But with Ken Crew's horrific injuries, it was the first time they had to deal with a real shark attack on their home beach.
They'd taken over and we'd merely beached our boat, then ran up to see, if there was anything we could do.
Ominously, Ken was no longer bleeding.
The shark just took one huge bite. One enormous bite.
There was no obvious sign of life, but nobody ever considered giving up.
As soon as he was dragged out of the water up onto the beach, you could see the extent of his injuries. See, one leg was missing, the other one was in tatters.
The dramatic scene on that November morning in the year 2000 was something that was burnt forever into the memories of everyone who was on Cottesloe Beach that day. Many of them knew Ken Crew as a friend or as a highly respected member of their community, but it was a losing battle. It took a while to sink in. The fight for Ken's life had been lost.
I just got down beside him and I put my arms around him.
Paramedics arrived in the ambulance.
As much as everyone wanted to do something, all they had left was to watch, helpless and horrified at the terrible events on that sad morning.
I was walking with two friends. I was actually just past the Cottesloe Surf Pavilion, and the owner of the Blue Duck drove up and picked me up.
Robert, hop in the car. Kenny's been attacked by a shark.
My first thought was, is he still alive? And they said, I don't know.
3 or 4 police officers set up the screen. They quietly got everybody to go right back to the edge of the sand on the path.
As Robin walked behind the police barrier, her heart sank as she comprehended the horror.
Remember thinking, oh God, don't let us see this, don't let us see it. I thought, well, it was useless. You had to see it.
Horrible. They had his lower body covered by a sheet, and I remember wanting to have a look to see actually, what part of his body was taken, but they wouldn't let me. Yeah, so it was horror.
It was barely 6:30 in the morning when Robin and her 3 children were left without a husband and father.
And I just said that he's peaceful.
It was then left up to Father Brian to perform the last rites on his friend, Ken Crew.
O Lord Jesus Christ, most merciful Lord of earth, we ask that you receive this child into your arms.
I knew that Father Brian was down there and at his side.
You believe in God, believe also in me.
Somebody obviously had come up and said to me at a later stage that Ken had died, so I knew that.
To be prepared to return to the denser reality of God the Father, creator of all. Amen, amen, amen.
That was the day.
From the moment they saw his injuries, everyone knew it was next to hopeless, but they never stopped trying to save Ken's life. Dirk had suffered injuries to both legs. One foot was literally ripped apart, and Robin was suffering profound shock coming to terms with the tragedy that had just torn her life apart.
I got taken straight by ambulance to Fremantle Hospital.
Dirk Avery was taken to hospital after trying to drag his friend free.
The reality of what happened on that Perth family beach reverberated through the city. One man dead, another mutilated, and family shattered. The debate raged for weeks with calls to hunt down and kill the shark responsible. No one actually involved in the attack wanted that sort of revenge, and friends say that would have included the victim, Ken Crew.
It would have to be a huge quantum leap for Kenny to have any sense that the shark must be caught and killed.
Dirk Avery felt the same way about the great white responsible for the day of horror that claimed the life of his good friend and almost took his as well. It had shown it was capable of repeated attacks, and it had a complete lack of fear around humans and small boats. But Dirk has the most profound respect for all sharks, even the one that ripped his leg open.
My attitude was that that's their domain. Even though I'd lost my best friend from it, I thought, well, look, what purpose are you going to serve by going out and killing that shark? Because there'll be other sharks, and we're better off trying to understand their ways and what makes them act the way they do. People have sort of found it sort of strange that I had adopted that attitude towards sharks.
It took surgeons 3 months to reconstruct his foot and for the injuries to heal. And despite the terror of that encounter with the great white, Dirk was back in the water as soon as he could. Some who were on the beach that day never returned to the water, but the pod resumed their daily swim parallel to the beach, though not so far out as before. The lifeguards patrolled Cottesloe with a new awareness of the worst that could happen, and beachgoers were even more alert for each other's safety.
I think the community spirit at North Cottesloe is a bonus. It's made people a lot closer.
More than 700 family and friends attended the memorial service for 49-year-old Ken Crew, Dirk Avery, the man who tried to beat the massive shark off his friend in a wheelchair, his feet still heavily bandaged. Inside the church, tears mingled with laughter. Ken Crew described simply as a great mate.
Ken was a devoted husband and loving father, a man of extreme integrity.
Just a wonderful human being.
This day of tragedy was also marked by extraordinary acts of bravery and determination. The heroic bystander who swam to where Ken was dying in the water, the ski paddlers who helped so many to safety, and the first aid volunteers who battled against the odds. On that day, many lost a dear friend, and one woman lost the love of her life.
At least I was able to say goodbye to him.
Ken's daughter Amy was to swim with him that day, but he let her sleep in.
He walked out of the driveway and her bedroom was upstairs at the front of the house, and he actually turned and looked up at her window, and she was looking out the window, and that was her last memory of her dad.
At Cottesloe, there's a beachside memorial to Ken Crew. It honors a much-loved member of the community, but it's also a chilling reminder of the events of that day that was everyone's worst animal nightmare. Could your worst animal nightmare be one of the world's deadliest spiders, hunting where you least expect it? The safety of your own home shattered by an agonizing spider bite.
Dr. Fisher explained to me what was going on with Gordon. Explained to me also about the anti-venom.
Gordon Wheatley's only chance was to be the first human guinea pig for an experimental antidote to the powerful venom of the Australian funnel web spider. Suburban Sydney is the epicenter of fatal bites. 4 million people live in proximity to a thriving population of highly venomous spiders. Not long before Gordon Wheatley was bitten in 1981, there was another victim of a serious bite. A large male funnel web spider had wandered inside, probably in search of a female partner. In this horrifying case, a child's clothing became a deadly trap waiting to be sprung.
Hey Sam, come on, let's get changed so we can go out. That's it, thumbs up. Good boy. Put your shirt back on. Okay, that's it. Do the buttons up. What is it? Quick, quick. Shirt off.
Small children were very difficult to treat.
Their smaller bodies can't absorb as much venom, and a bite is more likely to be fatal.
The lungs flood with fluid. The person progressively becomes short of oxygen. The syndrome is like an overdose of exercise.
The heart rate can go up so high it's almost out of control. A child's pulse rate can go up to 240 per minute.
Up to 1981, there were 13 recorded fatalities from funnel web spiders.
The circulation will eventually begin to fail, the blood pressure become low, and the patient may die.
What do you mean there's nothing more you can do?
To prevent tragic deaths like this one, the medical world was crying out for an antidote. A female funnel web nurtures up to 250 babies in a season and rarely moves far from her nest during a 10-year lifespan. After a few months, the surviving young disperse and build their own nests. The male spider matures at 3 years and has only a 6-month window to search for females to mate with before he dies. Funnel web spider venom first kills the prey and then liquefies the victim so the hunter can suck the bodies dry. Funnel webs will nest right next to the house in a suburban garden, and they're notorious for their aggressive defense. They produce a huge amount of venom and can easily inject a fatal dose in a single prolonged bite. Dr. Struan Sutherland took up the challenge to find an antidote in the mid-60s. He was instrumental in developing life-saving snakebite antivenom, and he was determined to stop the tragic deaths caused by funnel web spiders. It took incredible determination and many years of intensive research before he developed something that might work.
This represents the end of a nerve. Now what the main toxin from the funnel web venom does is attack this nerve so that thousands of impulses come down the nerve, and as a result you get great muscle spasm.
Dr. Malcolm Fisher had the best record of treating victims using standard emergency medicine, sometimes fighting a losing battle without an antidote. Dr. Sutherland discovered that rabbit blood serum would produce the right antibodies, but only a very tiny amount per rabbit. Funnel web venom is deadly only to primates, humans, apes, lemurs, and monkeys. So the first batch of antidote was tested on 2 monkeys. It worked perfectly. The Australian Reptile Park near Sydney is the only place in the world where they milk spiders for venom to make an antidote. The funnel web is provoked until its fangs ooze venom, which is then siphoned off with a small suction tube.
In order for a funnel web to actually bite, they need to stand up. They stand up and then they strike down. And strike down repeatedly with these big massive fangs. Australia has a lot of venomous animals, and all spiders are venomous. And the venom of the funnel web spider, if the bite's not treated, you can die. When you think about where the Atrax robustus, the Sydney funnel web, lives, that's where a lot of the population live, around Sydney, in and around Sydney. So I presume that that's why we come in such close contact with funnel webs. We have them in our backyards.
The morning of the day Gordon Wheatley was bitten, his wife Gwen was tidying up the house for guests.
My wife Gwen had prepared the house for a barbecue.
It was typical funnel web weather, the air heavy with midsummer humidity.
During the day, she had seen the spider in the conservatory.
To Gwen, it was just another spider, no problem.
And had killed it.
The male, once he matures at the age of 3, he's got 6 months to fulfill his destiny. He has to mate before he dies. He's only got that 6-month period.
This one didn't make it, but there were more where it came from.
At night after rain, that's the time for the male to come out looking for the female.
On that fateful day, on the 31st of January 1981, a second spider was on the prowl. and the Wheatley home was again the unlucky target. 2 spiders in one day in the same house was against the odds. In daylight, it just wanted a makeshift home, a hiding place until it could move around more safely in the dark. Mostly, they stay outside, but inside, they like a cool, damp spot where they feel comfortable. Clothes and footwear in bathrooms and laundries make ideal hiding places. They don't like being exposed, but the one that bit Gordon Wheatley traversed open spaces and penetrated deep into the house where no one would expect to find a funnel web spider.
Well, I can't remember ever seeing a spider in the house. In the conservatory, which had a stone floor, I can accept that.
On that January night in 1981, Gordon Wheatley arrived home after work. The night was still muggy after a long, hot day.
How was your day, Gwen?
Oh, not bad, love. How was yours?
Traffic was hell.
Oh.
And I always liked to change when I got home from out like a suit and tie. And I always wore socks in the house, with shorts and singlets.
It's common for Australians to walk around with unprotected feet.
And I can remember that particular day I had a brand new shirt on. Now, why you should remember that, I don't know.
Gordon was looking forward to putting the day behind him and spending a relaxing evening with his family. But with the temperature on the way down, the spider was winding up to the most active part of its day.
So that particular night we had our meal.
Conversation was all about tomorrow's barbecue. The spider Gwen killed barely rated a mention. It didn't occur to anyone there might be another one inside the house.
Well, I'll tell you what, I had to sweep the whole conservatory today. Found a spider.
Really? What'd you do with it?
Killed it.
First one we've had in the conservatory, isn't it?
No, it's because it's so hot.
And wet. Brings them out.
That's true.
Probably watched a little bit of television.
As the house activities settled down, the spider continues its hunt. It headed precisely to where Gordon was about to complete one last chore before bedtime.
Gwen happened to say the lamp had fused.
That bulb's blown.
Normally I would have said, well, I'll do it in the morning. But the fact that we're having a busy day, I decided, well, I'll do it there and then.
Might fix it tonight. It's a busy day tomorrow.
Okay. All right, I'm off to bed.
I said to Gwen, I'll change it now. So Gwen went upstairs and I stayed down below to change the globe. I reached up, pulled the lamp down, changed the globe, and was just reaching across to put the globe back up again, and my foot trod on something sharp. I stood right on top of it. Ow! I thought at first it was a drawing pin. Oh! I think I made enough noise that Gwen came down and both of us did. I could see the spider, Gwen could see the spider.
Just trod on that rotten spider.
Oh, my word.
Look, I might drive down to the hospital and get it checked out.
That's when Gwen had the presence of mind to contact the young GP behind.
I'll ring Paul next door. He's a doctor. His light's still on.
We were able to capture it and take it to the hospital.
Gwen had no idea it was serious, that her husband would soon be fighting for his life.
I was just surprised, even perhaps at that short period of time, that I was starting to sweat and palpitate.
Gordon didn't realize how much venom was pumped into his foot when he pressed down on the spider's fangs.
I felt a little bit woozy and I was starting to sweat.
The venom was racing through his body, setting off violent explosions inside his nervous system.
The funnel web venom is an extremely toxic venom. It does lots of different things to your body.
Then it was Gordon's first lucky break. Their neighbor, a doctor, was home.
Oh, look, it's Gordon. He's been bitten by a spider. I'd like you to take a look at it.
I had no sense of fear at all. I knew I'd been bitten. I just thought maybe I should get myself checked out.
Gordon, what have you done here, mate?
There's going to be localised pain in the bite site because of the sheer size of the fangs and the acidity of the venom.
Give us a look.
It's a spider bite, mate.
Oh, gee, a big bite. Do you know what it was? No, mate. I've got it in the kitchen.
Once the venom gets through into your bloodstream, into your body, it's not going to take very long.
Oh, it's hard to breathe.
You'll start to shake.
How's your heart going?
Oh, it's racing, yeah.
You stop breathing, you might go into cardiac arrest.
Here it is here. Hang on. Yeah, that's definitely a funnel web, mate.
That's not good, is it?
Not particularly, mate. Let's try and get this pressure bandage on, eh?
The young doctor, he knew what the protocol was to apply a bandage rather than a tourniquet, which is important.
David, if you could get the car ready, mate, we might just take him to hospital.
This was Gordon's second stroke of luck. Compression bandages for spider bites was a very new technique, and the doctor was up to date. At this stage, neither Gwen nor Gordon realized he'd been hit with a fatal dose of venom.
You'll be right.
There was no need for Gwen to come. I was only go down for a checkout. I'd be there for an hour or so while they check me out.
Oh, look after that salt, mate. I won't be long. I'll be back soon.
The doctor knew Gordon's life was in the balance, and driving themselves would be quicker than calling an ambulance.
I remember the last thing I said to David as we got in the car, "Now, don't drive too fast, David."
I'll drive. Don't drive too fast, son.
And Paul, the young doctor, said, "David, go like hell.
Go like hell.
We haven't got time."
Haven't got much time.
Gordon's racing heartbeat went into overdrive. His blood pressure soared, and sweat poured from his fevered skin.
Is he all right?
He needed intensive medical intervention, and he needed it fast.
We went straight into emergency.
We're going around to emergency straight away.
I remember going to epilepsy.
Okay, Gordon, I'm just going to give you some oxygen there to breathe on, mate. Just help with your breathing, hey?
His nervous system was rushing to a complete meltdown.
I was starting to twitch.
Okay, Gordon, I just want to have a bit of a look in your eyes now, mate. Just pop that away, sister, thanks.
It was very hot and dry mouth.
Good. Lovely, get that oxygen again.
Palpitating.
It became a battle just to keep him breathing.
I became very aggressive.
Gordon was thrashing around, totally out of character. Panic-stricken, he tried to rip off his intravenous lines and breathing mask.
My lungs were being flooded with my stomach.
The emergency doctors knew they were out of their depth.
He's going to aspirate. I think we better intubate him, mate. Can we get a size 8 tube?
I'll arrange an ambulance to North Shore and call Fisher.
That's great, thanks, Paul.
If anyone could save him, it was Dr. Malcolm Fisher.
I had no muscle control. I was drowning. Paul Vanderland, the young GP, said, "I think you better go home and tell your mother that Gordon's going to North Shore Hospital."
David, I think you should go and get your mother and meet us at Royal North Shore Hospital.
And it might be a good idea for you to get yourself across there.
We're transferring your father there now.
The emergency team had been overwhelmed by the incredibly intense symptoms.
While I was being transported to North Shore Hospital, Dave was on his way back home again to tell his mother that Gordon had been admitted to hospital. This is a precautionary measure.
They were trying not to panic Gwen, and his son David could hardly believe what was happening. After all, less than 1 hour ago, his father was in perfect health. On their way to the hospital, they saw the ambulance and followed it to Royal North Shore Hospital, where Dr. Malcolm Fisher was waiting.
He was transferred from Ryde because Ryde did not have a major intensive care unit, and Dr. Burgess realised that this was a very serious problem. It was obvious that he was severely envenomated.
Hey Gordon, Malcolm Fisher.
He had pulmonary edema, his blood pressure was through the roof.
Okay, let's get him inside.
He had fixed dilated pupils.
Can we get you to make sure that all vitals are hooked up, ready to go?
He was severely acidotic.
His family still didn't realize that Gordon was dying. His body could not endure much more.
The family, Gwen particularly, had no idea that perhaps, I was that close to being dead.
The Royal North Shore Hospital had only just received the very first trial samples of spider antivenom. Dr. Fisher was deciding whether to try the experimental antidote as he worked on stabilizing Gordon's violent symptoms.
We, at that stage, had approval to trial the antivenom which Struan had made.
Conventional treatment had failed. Gordon's body was shutting down, but Dr. Fisher believed there was one last chance.
On arriving at the hospital, I was summoned to intensive care.
Mrs. Wheatley?
Yes.
We need to discuss your husband.
Dr. Fisher explained to me what was going on with Gordon and his condition, and explain to me also about the anti-venom.
There's a new anti-venom that's never been tested on humans before.
She didn't know anything about the new trip, because it had never been published up to then.
Gordon would be the first. We don't know the side effects, but we think it's his best chance.
And I had to give my consent for this.
We need your consent to administer.
I think it was a big decision to put on a lady.
Is it that serious?
Yes.
And I can remember saying to him, well, what would you do in a case like this?
What would you do?
And he said, I think I would sign and give my consent.
I'd give it to him.
Big decision. Because she didn't know what was going to happen.
Right. What do I need to sign?
I guess that was it. And it was, you know, I had Gordon's care was in his hands.
There were just 6 vials of antivenom, and Dr. Fisher had to make a snap judgment.
Antivenom had never been used in a human before. We reconstituted 3 vials of it and we administered it intravenously.
Nobody knew how much antivenom would be too much or too little. It had worked on monkeys, but what about humans?
I was very confident.
Dr. Fisher had to be ready for anything. Could Gordon suffer an overdose of antidote? Or had the brutal venom already caused too much damage?
The protocol, even though we knew it had worked on animals satisfactorily, had no idea what was required to work on human beings.
After the first dose, they watched and waited. No improvement, but no sign that Gordon might be allergic to the antidote.
I was pretty confident because of that no one whose body was doing the things that Gordon Wheatley's body was doing would be capable of having an allergic reaction.
Gwen and David Wheatley now knew it was a fight for survival, with the second vial of antivenom now in play. All their hopes were pinned on an untried chemical being fed into Gordon's intravenous drip. The family was stunned by the sheer speed of his decline, from being strong and healthy into a seemingly unstoppable slide towards death. No change after dose number 2, and in the early hours of the morning, Dr. Fisher fed the 3rd vial of antivenom into the drip feed. If it was going to work at all, Dr. Fisher felt there should be something positive happening by this time. As the minutes ticked by, David and Gwen waited, hoping the antidote would give them the miracle they wanted.
Nothing happened.
Any change in pulse? No, still the same.
Dr. Fisher could hardly believe it. He was sure it would work.
When nothing happened after the first 3 vials, I found that incredibly disappointing, more so for Struan than me, because this had been a work that had taken many, many years.
It's not working.
The apparent failure of the antidote meant that Gordon's time was running out. But there was one last resort for Dr. Fisher.
One of the golden rules of the treatment of envenomation, be it snake or spider, is that if you give the right antivenom for that particular animal and the patient doesn't start to improve very quickly, then you should give more.
He decided it was worth a try.
I then rang Struan.
He wanted to double-check with the scientist who knew more about the antivenom than anyone else.
Struan here.
Struan, I've given 3 vials of this stuff. It hasn't killed him, but hasn't done him much body good either.
Malcolm Fisher rang me about 1:30 in the morning, and I remember his words. He said, well, I've given this fellow 1 shot, it hasn't killed him and it hasn't cured him.
Look, give him another 3. We don't want him to die. Nobody knows how much he needs, so try another 3.
Another 3, okay.
Everybody was just go, 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 hoping that it would work.
The final 3 vials were quickly prepared for use, everyone well aware they were stepping into unknown territory. Gordon's ordeal had lasted more than 2 hours. As far as the medical scientists assumed, 3 vials was the ideal safe dose. They had no idea whether doubling it would cause a deadly reaction, a miracle cure, or do nothing at all.
Within minutes, everything started to return towards normal.
One by one, Gordon's deadly symptoms slowly reversed and then faded away entirely.
Are you with us?
And in an hour, Gordon was virtually better.
His heart rate's returning to normal.
Gordon was incredibly lucky that the antivenom had just been developed. It was the moment that marked the end of the funnel web spider's reign of terror in Sydney suburbs.
You're a lucky guy.
And I think virtually at that point, I was well again.
You're back with us, mate.
The recovery was just as fast as the onset of the symptoms.
Good on you, mate.
As soon as his patient was safe, Dr. Fisher broke the good news to Struan Sutherland.
Malcolm Fisher rang back and said, and I quote, "You've just ruined a bloody beautiful syndrome."
Struan, you've just ruined a bloody beautiful disease.
All people that have been involved in the project were very happy about that.
Dr. Sutherland's antivenom meant an immediate end to all fatalities from funnel web spider bites.
I was so grateful.
Yes, looking very nice. You feeling good?
Oh, I feel a hell of a lot better.
When you think that 7 weeks treatment with the old protocol, and maybe 3 or 4 hours with the new protocol, and I'm sure today it would be even shorter because the doctors would know what the prescribed amount of antivenom is to achieve the results they're looking for.
So, thanks for everything you've done. We're celebrating with a cake. Let's go.
While the family was rejoicing in the survival of a loved one, the community was celebrating a fatality-free funnel web season.
I remained in the hospital Saturday for observation, and Sunday afternoon I was discharged.
So far in this funnel web season, as doctors call it, 5 people have been bitten, but none was seriously enough affected to use the new serum.
It made not only Australian history, but it made world history.
Gordon Wheatley's case was different. The fangs went deep and the poison spread quickly. After the injection of the serum, doctors were surprised at his rapid improvement.
Now there was this marked improvement which we haven't been able to effect in any other way.
Gordon was unlucky to be bitten, but very lucky to be alive.
My attitude to the spiders is part of nature, and we just get on with life and share the world with them.
He survived only because all the right people were there at the right time.
I think I'm lucky. Lucky.
Today, creating a steady supply of antivenom relies on the help of Sydneysiders who have to live with the spiders. The Australian Reptile Park relies on the public to capture funnel webs so they can be milked of their venom, the prime ingredient for making the antidote. Collection points have been set up throughout Sydney to collect the hundreds of funnel webs needed to keep the antivenom program running. Since the introduction of antivenom in 1981, there have been no more recorded deaths, and everyone's worst spider nightmare is over.